Alright, I installed the reservoir and the pump. It's getting a little tight in there, but I think we're gonna be okay. This needs to, make a pretty tight bend, but I don't think it'll be a problem. Now, since I got the radiator and the reservoir mounted, I think it's time to put in this motherboard. The thing about that is this damn case is missing this standoff and this standoff. And these standoffs aren't your normal size standoff. The thread is, well, not the thread, but the diameter of the standoff is super wide, and all the standoffs that I have just kind of push into the hole, and they're just too skinny. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install a couple of the standoffs that I have onto the motherboard, and then we'll just go ahead and slip it in there, and the motherboard standoffs will fall down in this hole, and then I can go on the back side and put like a little nut on there. I think that's the best way to do it. So let's go ahead and get this motherboard prepped. First thing we got to do is put on the CPU water block. Man, that freaking thermal paste gets stuck on there so fast. Creates a vacuum or something. Oh my god. As much as I tried right there to wiggle it free, it took the CPU with it. God damn it. That's what I fucking hate about this pin setup with AMD CPUs. Everybody argues that this is a better way to do it, but I just don't see it. I prefer LGA over, what is this, PGA. It's a better system. I don't care what anyone says. I mean, you guys can argue with me all you want. I will never believe in a million years that this pin system is better than LGA. It's really hard to damage the pins on a motherboard socket. It hardly ever happens. But that's just not an excuse to say that this system is better. There's way more issues with this system than LGA. But whatever. To each his own. That is a debate for another day. Might be kind of dirty under this, who knows? Let's see. Ah, this is a pretty darn clean motherboard for an eBay purchase. Let's get our little packet of spring-loaded deals. Alright, so we're installing the water block. We remove the cooler mount, the back plate, and they give you these little things in the kit. It's basically just a little bolt with a nice little finger nut, and then a regular little nut on there, a spring, and a couple like silicone washers. I already installed 3. The one thing that I do is I add a couple little metal washers, and that's just because I don't think it's a good idea just to have the screw going straight up against these silicone washers. So what I do is I remove this little nut, remove this nut, and I'll take off these silicone washers and I'll put a real one and then a silicone washer, just so the screw's up against a real washer and not just that rubber. And then I'll lift up the board, stick in the bolt, then we'll put a silicone washer because that's up against the motherboard, and then the metal washer. And really they should include metal washers in this little kit, but they don't. But I think it's a good idea to add them. It just gives more stability to this whole setup. So then you take that little nut and you put it on there and you tighten it down. So now you got 4 posts sticking up like that. And that way you can slip the block on there. And after I put that on there and make sure these bolts are, you know, in the right spot, because they're kind of, the hole's bigger than the actual bolt. I like to go like this. I'll hold this little nut right here and take this little baby screwdriver underneath. Just give it a little tightening, snug it down. These ones might be hard to get to with this little wrench. Let's try to grab this little nut with some needle nose, and I got it. And just give that a couple twists. That really makes a difference, tightening up that post. It's just kind of hard to tighten those up without having the water block on there to line them up. And still it's a little bit tight when you pull it off. There we go. Easier to get it on than to get it off. There is our pea size amount of compound. Let's go ahead and pull the plastic liner. Still probably a good idea to hit this a little bit with some rubbing alcohol. All right, let's put this hog on. I'm just trying to make sure that it's seated on the chip and not binding on those threads. Let me put the springs on. All right. It's pretty solid. Oh, this is what I was talking about. So in the case, we are missing this standoff and this standoff. So what I'm going to do is go grab a couple of standoffs right now and put them in the board first. I'm a little short on standoffs, so we're going to use one painted one and one brass. Get your screw ready. Just put the standoff behind it and install it. That way when we put the board in the case, you know, these standoffs will fall down in the hole, and then I'll find a little nut that we can put on the back side. All right, we got those 2 standoffs installed. All right, let's install this board. What's good about pre-installing these back ones is that you can kind of push the board into place and it will hold the board, kind of like some of those pegs that align the board for you. Kind of makes it easier. Alright guys, so I put that test loop together earlier and I used this old dingy tube that I've had for a few years, and you know, it worked out for testing, but I just went to the store and bought some brand new nice tube. So we're going to be putting this thing together. I already put this one onto the CPU. Almost forgot a little cheap deal. Need some light. Can't see. It's kind of dark in my garage. That actually might be a little too long. I'm gonna trim that up some. There we go. It's a nice clean line to the pump. And it's the day after 4th of July. And I still got neighbors blasting off their excess surplus of fireworks. I don't know if you heard that in the background, but it's kind of funny. I flipped the PC on its back, or on its face, I should say, on its front side, and so I could push harder up against this reservoir. But now I got it on there, so we're gonna flip it back over. All right. So now we got that tube like that. Kind of crazy looking, but it allows for the tube to stay off the motherboard. Let's go ahead and trim this up a little bit. And this hose is pretty small, and it's kind of hard to get on the nipple, so I've been going like this with my needle nose and just stretching it just a tiny bit. It's still super hard to get on, but at least it's giving me some sort of head start. I like that. That looped around nicely. It's a little bit crazy, but it's better than having it loop around on the motherboard. I think we'll put the radiator on first. It's damn hot in my garage too, so it's kind of helping the hose stay malleable. I think see how it's got a natural curve in it? I'm gonna naturally get this curve going up because I don't want it like this, because then it's going to be in the way of the graphics card. Yeah. The heat really is helping. It's pretty crazy. Alright, so I'm just going to cut this long and then we'll trim it up to where we need it. And I think I'm going to get this one to do a crazy curly Q also. Maybe just like that in front of the graphics card. Might be the best way. Even though it kind of looks a little hinky. Maybe like that. Aha. There. That'll look nice. Because they'll both be going this direction. And they'll both stay out of the way of the flow of air and all that stuff. I'm happy with that. You kind of have to let the hose, you know, naturally fall where it wants to, but you can kind of curl it around and manipulate where you want it to go. Alright, I like how that looks. So just put this last one on here on the block. No kinks. I like it. That actually turned out, you know, as good as I could have hoped. The loop is done.
Daddy?
What, baby?
You want to read this for me?
You want me to read you a book?
Yeah.
Baby girl, I'm building a computer.
What? See?
I'm building a PC.